All right, everybody. Welcome back to another episode of the Professional Volunteer Podcast, where Instagram has brought us another awesome guest today. I have on the show with me John Ford, and John runs an Instagram page called The Slow House Rules. I've been following John for a while, and we finally connected through Messenger the other day and talked a little bit about his journey and the story behind the Slow House. So, John, welcome to the show.
Thank you. Thank you for having me. Appreciate it.
Oh, absolutely. It's a pleasure to have you. If you would please introduce yourself and tell everybody who you are, where you're from.
Sure. Like you said, John Ford. I live in Idaho. I'm from Idaho. I work in a small city called Star, Idaho. And I've been there full time for just about 6.5 years. And prior to that, I worked at a combination department, basically right next to where I work now, is Eagle Fire Department in Idaho. And I worked 4 years as a volunteer, part-time employee until I was hired. Star and Eagle are about 20 to 25 minutes outside of Boise, west of Boise.
Okay.
So for people that know Idaho, they usually know three places: Boise, Sun Valley, or Coeur d'Alene. So I work about 25 minutes west, directly west of Boise.
All right. Okay. And was firefighting in your family at all? Or are you first generation?
No. Prior to me getting involved in it, I didn't have any association with the fire department at all. I didn't have any family whatsoever that was in the fire department. I didn't have any real close friends that were in the fire department. It was something that I really never gave a lot of thought or consideration to until my junior year of college. And that was when September 11th happened. I was a junior. I just started my junior year of college. And that event sort of shook the foundation of my beliefs and who I was and what I felt life should be about, really. And I thought about being in college and that deep sort of, what am I doing here? What am I hoping to get? Where do I see myself going? And watching the videos of that event, which I watched countless hours and days over and over and over again. It was something that just rattled me to the core of who I was as a person. And watching the videos of those guys responding and seeing their faces as they're going into what is certain death, and they still went in because they had a duty to give to their fellow man and woman. And I just thought, that is what an honorable life is, and that's what an honorable life should be. And ever since that event, it sort of planted that seed in me, and it's something that I thought about ever since.
Wow. Yeah, that's I think anybody that was here for 9/11 remembers where they were when 9/11 happened, and it definitely affected everyone differently. And it's always good to talk to somebody that took that event and basically molded their pathway almost
it
because
changed.
of it.
I mean, it changed the direction of my vision of life and so much about who I am now, witnessing all that happened from that event. It really changed the direction of my life and where I was going from that point.
For sure. So let's talk about your Instagram page, the Slow House, and behind what's behind that. And we chatted a little bit on Messenger, and you told me the story behind it. The only thing I'm going to say is you told me whose seminar you were sitting in when you had this revelation of and this idea. That guy's kind of a New York legend, so we're gonna keep it nameless. Though I
He's not even a New
100.
York legend. He's
Yeah,
a
yeah, yeah.
nationwide legend.
He's a nationwide legend, and so we'll leave it nameless because we don't want to, we don't want to fire everybody up about, somebody as well respected. But once you told me the story, um, I could 110% relate to what you said to me,
Mhm.
because I found myself at times in that same situation, sitting here going,
Yeah.
wow, this is extremely great, valuable information, but there are so many aspects of it that just don't apply to where I am, where I'm from, and how we operate. So without taking any more out of your story, go ahead and jump in.
Well, I was in Florida. It was last May at a conference, and I've been very fortunate that my department has allowed me to go to various conferences across the country. I went to FDIC in 2016, and Portland has a really awesome conference every year in February and March. And so, anyway, I've had these opportunities to go and listen to people talk, and I had this thought before. It had crossed my mind because I've listened to people talk, and generally when they bring in speakers, they bring in people from large metropolitan departments, and because
Sure.
of their experience, they've got great experience. They've been to countless runs, countless fires, and done so many things.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm listening to this person speak, and I'm just thinking to myself, we work in two different worlds. Our job is the same,
Sure.
but the worlds that we work in are two vastly different worlds. We don't have that many resources, and we don't have that many people showing up to a first alarm. Our initial alarm where I work is 3 engines, a truck, and a battalion. And my department at Star, we're a single station, 12-person department. So we have an engine, we have a brush truck, and we have a water tender or water tanker, depending on where you work in the country.
Yep. Yep.
Um, and that's what we have out of our station. So our first alarm, we're the only unit for Star that is going to be responding. And so we get our automatic aid or mutual aid from the departments around us. And so I'm listening to these people talk, and I just think, I don't even know what that would be like to have countless resources, engines, trucks, squads, rescues, multiple battalions, all this stuff showing up on your alarms. And so that was sort of the genesis of where the slow house came from. Was I'm not going to be able to give you real tactics on fires or rescues or anything like that because we don't have that many.
Right. Okay. Yeah.
What we deal with is, how do you keep the momentum up in your department? How do you keep morale up? How do you keep guys engaged when you have a fire in January and you may not have another structure fire until August, September, or you may not have another first due on a particular shift for 3 years? So how can you continue to keep guys engaged and preparing for that event when it's uh, happens so few and far between, versus guys that work at, Stockton, California, where they're going to fires every day, or
Sure.
LA, or places like that, where that everybody knows that the best boost to morale is a working fire to your first due. Everybody's excited after it. Everyone's feeling good. They want to talk about what went well, what didn't go well, all that stuff. But when you have one 6 months ago, and you may not have one for another 6 months, or you may not have one for years, how do you keep those guys engaged, and how do you keep that momentum going and people moving forward, and not just basically becoming so complacent because those events are so few and far between? So that's how the genesis of where the slow house came about.
So that's why I found the story behind it so interesting, because my lane is volunteer fire service, right? And
Mm-hmm.
I've been fortunate enough over the years to work with, learn from, attend conferences, and be around tons and tons of super knowledgeable, vastly experienced, vast areas of experience, guys from the career side. But my lane is the volunteer fire department. It's what I've done
Yeah.
for 30, it's what I've done for 30 years. And the department I spent the first 20 years in did about 1,500 calls a year, probably in busy years, 30 to 35 structure fires a year. Not bad, for a
Hmm.
volunteer organization. Now where I am, we run about 200 calls a year. And like you said, if we have one first due structure fire a year, if we have one or two, that's a busy year. And in
Yeah.
my area, in my rural area, there are departments that if they run a half a dozen to a dozen calls a year, that's a busy year. So
Yeah.
so your idea, your story really hit home, because I do feel that is a real challenge. And I never really thought of it from the career side, but I always say there really is no difference. We
Yeah.
do the same job. We have to be just as prepared. We just have to be just as professional. Until I talked to you, I never really thought of, the slow firehouse on the career side.
Yeah.
It's the same thing,
And I think I I believe that it's far more common and widespread than what we tend to believe,
Right.
right? Because when we go to these conferences, we listen to these people and we think, wow, everybody works at these places where they're running 5,000 calls a year and they're getting fires, every week and this and that. But when you look across the entire country, I think it's far more commonplace to have places like where I work and where you
Sure.
work, where we don't have the regular events. And it's a real challenge to keep people focused and engaged, because it's so easy for people to start get that mindset that it's not going to happen. This isn't going to happen today. And then as soon as you think that, that's when it happens, and then you're caught because you're unprepared for that event.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Yeah, for sure. I mean, that definitely is one of the larger challenges in the fire service, is keeping people engaged and retaining them. A
Hmm.
large challenge on the volunteer side is recruitment and retention.
Yeah.
If it's your job, if it's your career, you've really got no choice. You've got to come to work, whether
Hmm.
you're busy or you're not busy. You still have to come to work. On our side of the fence, you've got to keep morale high, keep them continuously training for something that may or may not happen this year or next, and then
Yeah.
you got to retain them, and get them to understand, well, you're not being compensated for this. So
Hmm.
but please
But we really
keep
appreciate
yeah,
it
but
if you keep it
we really
going.
appreciate it, and we really need
Yeah.
you.
Yeah.
you know so it's
Yeah.
absolutely a challenge.
Hmm. Yeah. It's so easy for human nature to set in. When you first started, you're super excited and you want to be part of it and it's ready to go. And after 6 months, after a year, whatever the case would be, and you haven't had that big event, you haven't had that big call. It's human nature that it just that excitement wears, the engagement wears, the focus trails off, and you get lulled into believing that these things aren't going to happen. And then when you're unprepared and you've lost the focus and interest in it, that's when it occurs.
Sure.
And we don't get second chances. I often equate what we do to sports. And, you know, guys on a game, whether it's a football game, baseball, whatever, you may have a thrown interception or a pick six or whatever strikeout with the game on the line. You've got a game the next day. You've got a game shortly after that. We don't have that opportunity.
Right.
We get our one shot. And if we fail to prepare and show up and do our job as the people that we serve expect us to do, we don't get another chance. We may get another fire 6 months down the road, but Mrs. Smith's house, it burns down because of our lack of preparation. Yeah, we don't get another chance at Mrs. Smith. She's going to see what happened, and And if she loses confidence in us, then she's lost trust in us and what we do. And everything that we do is built upon that trust relationship between us and the people we serve.
For sure.
And once that starts to fracture, and once you start to lose that, there's really no going back. It's really hard to try to regain that.
Oh, absolutely. Definitely. So you're in this conference in Florida. You're listening to a nationally well-known speaker. You're sitting there realizing tactically this is great stuff. They're always great stories. They're entertaining. We all love
It's
to hear them, but you're like, okay, when I get back home, this
it's
isn't
great insight and it's great information to have, but the ability to implement that stuff is just not feasible.
right. Right.
It's not feasible. You take whatever you can get and you try to make it work with what you have as far as resources in your own place. Um, but everything you hear at these conferences, you're not going to be able to implement those things because not everybody has unlimited resources coming to your job.
Absolutely. Absolutely. So what are some things that you have done or ideas that you guys have used within your organization to keep that morale up, to keep guys interested in continuing to train and continuing to be better at their craft, knowing that, well, listen, yeah, you need to be on your A game every day, but that game might not show up until 6 months from now.
Yeah. I continually try to sell the point that everybody is important to someone wherever we work across this country, whether you work in the biggest departments in this country or whether you work in the most remote rural areas of America. There are people living wherever you work that are important, that are the life of somebody else, whether it's spouses, children, siblings, nephews, grandchildren, wherever it is, there are people living in your district that individual means everything to somebody else. And so
Absolutely.
it is our duty and our responsibility to ensure that we are doing everything we can to prepare to do our job to save that person if it's what it comes to. And that's one thing I continually try to remind people of and remind myself of is every day, even when you don't feel like doing it. There's people out there where I work, they are everything to somebody else. And they are entrusting me and they're entrusting the people I work with to be as well prepared, competent, and ready to act in an emergency to take care of that individual. And when you break it down like that and you really honestly look at that and try to absorb the weight of that responsibility that we have, I think it speaks for itself. And if people really take time to consider those things, yeah, you really are playing a game of life and death when we come to work for other people, not let
Absolutely.
alone the people ourselves or the guys that we work next to. Because not only do we need to be prepared for the people we respond to, we have 3-4 man crews. So I've got 3 other guys on my shift that I'm responsible for as well.
Sure.
Every time their spouse sends them to work, they're counting on me to be prepared to be able to save their life. Their kids are counting on me. And likewise, I tell them, my family's counting on you. So we're in this thing together. We need to continue to push and be better because it may not come today and it may not come tomorrow. We maybe get one shot in our entire career where we have an apartment fire with people trapped on the second floor. You may get that one time or a house fire, You may get
Absolutely.
one shot at that in a 30-year career. And nobody wants to be the person who gets that one shot and fails and knows it's because they failed to prepare and they failed to be competent and ready for that event. And so if you can try to get people to understand that, then I think that helps. And the other thing is always be willing to bring people along with you. Um, it doesn't help when you try to start an internal war of, well, this is what we do, and you
Right.
guys don't want to do it, so you guys go pound sand. It's always be willing to bring people along. We're in it together. All of us are in this together across the country.
Absolutely.
If I'm wearing a fire shirt out to the store, any actions I do will reflect on anybody else who works in the fire service as well. So you
Absolutely.
may, right? There may be somebody from where you're at visiting where I work or where I live. And if I'm wearing my fire shirt in the store and a jerk to the people next to me in the store or rude or whatever it is, it's a direct reflection on you as well.
Yeah,
So
for sure. Sure. Yeah. I mean, one thing you said that, it's great for us as individuals to take the job seriously, right? And to consistently try to be better at the craft of being a firefighter. But if we don't bring the members of our team along with us for that ride, there's only so much that we can do on our own.
absolutely.
This isn't a single person sport. This isn't
No.
golf. This is a team sport, and we absolutely need the support of the team around us. So keeping everybody motivated and engaged, and when we learn new things, bringing them in to the fold and trying to get them to buy into whatever it may be is extremely important in any organization.
Yeah. I say I need to be at my best so that we can be our best, so that we can best take care of the people we're responsible for. And like you said, no one is going to be able to do this alone. I don't care if you've got the best fire officer in the entire country. If you're working with two or three other people that are not interested, not engaged, that fire officer is not going to be able to do everything by him or herself. And likewise, that goes for any position of the crew. We're so dependent on one another through the entire organization. As a chief, right? As chief,
Sure.
you have to support the people that work underneath you, whether that be more administrative, deputy chief, division chiefs. They have to support the crews themselves, and we're all reliant and dependent on each other in order to best serve the people that we're responsible for. And one person who isn't engaged, or one person that uh, doesn't want to be a part of that team, can drastically affect the entire organization negatively.
Oh, absolutely.
And we're so dependent on one another to do everything at this job that you can't do it alone.
Yeah,
Absolutely
no
not.
way. I mean, look, as myself currently as a chief officer, I mean, there's nothing I could do without the support of my people and the people around me. I mean, if they don't buy into my vision, they don't buy into the goals that I may have set for the organization, or my group of officers have set for the organization, we're not going anywhere with those goals.
Yeah,
It absolutely depends on everyone else. And one thing you said, one common thing that we hear in the volunteer service, and I actually did a little writing about this topic today, is every now and again you'll hear somebody to refer to themselves as just a volunteer. And typically you hear that around some of the training requirements. You'll hear it
yeah,
sometimes, why do I have to do all of this? I'm just a volunteer. But like you said before, when are we going to work? When do people depend on us? It's usually in on their worst day, right?
exactly.
They don't care what the word is prior to firefighter. They don't care if it's volunteer firefighter or career firefighter. They just expect, almost in your words, people, competent, well trained people to show up and do the job and take care of their problem on their worst day.
Yeah, you're not going to be able to sell anybody if you fail to perform uh, at their house burning down, or whatever the case, an auto accident trying to cut somebody out. You're not going to be able to sell them well, we're just volunteers. That's why it went the way it went. They're not going to say, oh, you know what? I totally understand.
Yeah. Good for
It
you.
doesn't,
Thanks for
yeah, it
trying.
doesn't matter where you work.
Right.
People expect professionalism and
Right.
competence when they call 911. And
Right.
that's the weight of the job. Whether it's volunteer, whether it's career, whether it's in LA City or whether it's in Star, Idaho, it doesn't matter.
Yep.
When they call 911, they expect the people responding to take responsibility of that emergency, to be professional, well trained, and prepared for whatever that event is.
Yep.
And that's the weight of the job.
And listen, let's face it, people that aren't immersed in this community, in the emergency services community, don't know the difference. They don't know.
Right.
They pick up the phone, they dial 911, people show up. They're not checking IDs to see if it says IAFF or something else
No.
on it. They don't care.
They're not looking at the emblems on the rigs. They're not
No,
looking at
they
any of
don't
that
know
stuff.
anything. It means nothing to them, right? It means
Mhm.
absolutely nothing to that person on that day.
No. And the other thing, that we had a car fire a few days ago, and as we're pulling up through the streets, it was a young man. He was working at a construction site. They were building a house, and so the whole crew was out on one side, and there was no less than 7 phones out recording us as we're approaching. And I tell my guys in the headsets, hey, heads up, you got cameras on this side, you got cameras on that side, you got cameras
Yep.
across the street. And so it doesn't matter whether you're a volunteer or a career or whatever the case is, people are going to have their phones out and they're going to throw them on YouTube. And
Absolutely.
so you got to be prepared and ready for that. And no one's going to give you any slack, whether you're a volunteer or whether you're a 20-year professional.
No.
People know what it looks like when it goes well, and people know what it looks like when it's 8.5 minutes in, the house is still pushing fire out, and there's no lines charged, no water
Right.
flowing.
Right.
Everyone's going, what's going on? Why is there no water? Even the
Yeah.
citizens that
Yeah.
don't understand, that aren't in it.
Right.
You hear the comments of bystanders like, what are these guys doing? There's
Yeah.
no water flowing.
Yeah.
So
And your brothers and sisters across town or on the other part of the state or across the country, they're going to be your worst critics ever once that thing hits YouTube.
yeah,
So that's the other
unfortunately, yes.
that's the other whole part of the problem. So
Mm-hmm.
let's talk a little bit more about your Instagram page. Your content is great. You've got some fabulous, amazing photos on there. I think it's great stuff. And that's why I wanted to have you on here to talk about it. Hopefully a few more people find you and follow along after we talk and the podcast is up. But let's talk about your motivation for continuing to do that and just the message that you're trying to get across with the Instagram page.
I mean, the basic message is what we've talked about. It doesn't matter where you work in this country. It doesn't matter where you work in this entire world. If this is something that you do, whether you're paid and it's your career or whether you volunteer and it's something you do on the side, you have to be prepared and ready for what may come, because people are counting on it. Not only the people we respond to, the people we work with. I count on them to be at their peak. They count on me to be at my peak.
Mm-hmm.
And like we've discussed, we're all dependent on one another. So that's the continual message. And then as far as the content that goes on there, some of it is just my own sort of ramblings or ideas that I come up with, whether it's something happens when I'm at work, or it's something I see, or something. It's really an outlet for me to just sort of share these ideas that come into my mind. And sometimes it's the pictures and the photos themselves that speak to me, that I take these pictures. And it's funny because the people that I work with and the guys here that I'm around locally in the Boise area, they know if I'm on a training ground, like I have my camera. That's
right.
one of my things is I'm always taking pictures of my crew, and I'm always taking pictures of, we have a little training usually every year, a 3-day event called the Boise Firefighter Symposium here in the Boise Valley. And I take my camera and I take pictures of a bunch of people, and I like to share these photos with them, because one of the ways that I try to give back to the people I work with is I give them all these pictures. So at the end of their career, they have a story to share with their kids and with their grandkids.
Sure.
It's one thing that for guys to talk about, yeah, I worked whatever place for 25 years. And usually what do people have? They have a picture of their first day and they have a picture of their retirement and
It's true, very true.
everything, there's nothing in between.
Yeah.
And so one thing I try to sort of how all the taking the photos started is I wanted the people I work with to be able to have these photos of them, not just standing and posing in front of an engine or standing and posing in front of a flag, but actually out doing work
Mm-hmm.
and showing their family or their loved ones or whoever it may be, like, this is my career. And this is, when I was a nozzleman on this engine, this is when I was an engineer, this is when I was a captain, whatever the case is, but then allowing them to have that so that when they do retire, they actually have that story to share with people. You can tell them only so much, but when you can actually show them, I think it's invaluable. It's priceless
Absolutely.
for
Yeah.
people to have that. And so that's sort of the start of why I started taking pictures so much. And I've got thousands and thousands. It's ridiculous. I have a external hard drive full of pictures and videos that
Mm-hmm.
I've taken so much. But and so sometimes those pictures they just speak. When I look at them, I sort of have this idea of what this picture says to me, and a message will come and I'll write it real quick and share it. Or sometimes, like I said, we're out and we're doing things and it's an idea hits me and I'll find a picture that I think sort of goes with whatever I'm trying to say or whatever I'm going to write, and put them two together and put it out there for people. And my hope is that it helps, somebody, that one person can garner that and take it, and hopefully it can benefit them in some way. I know for me, being able to go around and travel to conferences and classes, you get to meet a lot of people and you start to develop that network and connections of people. And pretty soon, that becomes an invaluable part of your job, because when the days you're not feeling up to it and the days you are tired and the days you don't feel like working out or whatever it is, you've got your buddy over here that, is sharing videos of them doing force entry with blindfolds over their mask or whatever it is, or working on
Right.
masking up drills and stuff like that. And that network becomes so important to help to continue moving forward,
Yeah.
because I mean, every day I'd be lying if I said every day I go to work, I'm super motivated and want to get after it. I don't every day. Some days I am tired and I'm going in tomorrow. It's supposed to be 98 tomorrow. It's really hard to get super motivated to be outside in your turnouts when it's going to be 98.
Yeah, for
And it's
sure.
been, in the 70s for the most part so far. So um, all of that comes together and it just helps you push through and keep moving forward. And that's really what the whole page is about, is trying to give people in this country the opportunity to understand that you're not the only person who works at a slow fire department. You still have value wherever you work. It doesn't matter. You are valuable and you are important to your community. And it's where you work doesn't define our value as firefighters. It's how we go about our job, how we prepare for the job, how willing we are to invest to be better at the job is where the value that we bring and the value that we have, that's where it comes from. It doesn't come from the department name on the back. It comes from the willingness and the work we're willing to put in. That's where our value in this job comes from.
Absolutely. I can't, I got to tell you, I am so I'm so happy that I reached out to you to have this conversation, because I think that this conversation is going to be so valuable for a lot of the people that I know listen
Mm-hmm.
listen to this podcast. I mean, the podcast has grown. Unfortunately, I I don't know. I don't know the majority of the people that listen in every week, but the ones that are always messaging me and always commenting on the content and always send their feedback on the episodes, I know that this is gonna strike deep for some of them.
Well, good.
And
I mean, that's
yeah,
the goal of it all, is don't ever be ashamed of where you work. Never let anybody talk down to you where you work. Don't ever let anybody talk down to you because you're a volunteer.
right,
The community is still dependent on you wherever that is. Now, the value that you bring is what needs to be focused on. Am I putting in the work that I should be putting in? Am I preparing like I should be preparing? Am I striving to become a better version of myself in this line of work? That's where the true value is going to be determined. It's
right,
not where we work and all that. It's how hard and how willing are we to work at it and to get better. Because there's superstars and rock stars all over this nation that you'll never hear of in your entire life because they work at small rural places, but they're awesome. And there are guys who get full pay and benefits and all that that are minimal minimum standards, minimal work, minimal effort type people. They got in and they got their position and they will do nothing more.
right.
And so those, because they may work at a glamorous or big name department, doesn't mean that individually they bring the value that somebody who works in your department, who's constantly investing in bettering themselves, the value isn't the same,
You know, and
despite the differences.
that's the line, in the sand there for me. When I go on social media and I see some of these pages that are invested in tearing apart the fire service per se,
Mm-hmm.
posting that snapshot of that fire that we don't know when in that fire it happened. Somebody just grabbed the picture and they put a negative comment with it and it fires everybody else up to go negative. That's the line for me. You know what, if that happens to you and your organization and your department, and you know how that fire went, how your firefighters are trained, that they're invested, that they're well trained, and they come to the job ready to do it every day, whether they're career and volunteer, and somebody just did you wrong and grabbed a snapshot of whatever was happening at that particular time and used it to their advantage, whatever, just let it run its course. But if you're on the other side of that line in the sand and that same picture has been taken and you're not invested and you're not training and you don't really care about the job and all you want is the title of being a firefighter, but meanwhile Mrs. Jones's house is burning down,
Mm-hmm.
that's the difference. And I think
Yeah.
you hit on that perfectly.
Yeah. And we all make mistakes at this
Absolutely.
job. Everybody does. The personal ego is your biggest enemy because you're going to make mistakes. So you might as well realize going into it that you're going to make mistakes, and don't sit back and try to put yourself off as being a perfect member of your fire department that doesn't fail, doesn't mess up, and doesn't make mistakes, because it's not true. We do it all the time. I do it all the time. And one of the issues I think, as far as training goes and getting people to be invested in and focus on training, is nobody wants to look bad. It's the fear of looking bad in front of others.
Right.
And so if you're a leader of a department, or you consider yourself a leader of a department, be that person that when somebody says, hey, this is what we're going to work on today, this is how we're going to run through this stretch in the line or whatever it is, and they say, okay, who wants to go? Be the first person that goes. Step
Yeah.
up there and be the first person that goes, and realize, yeah, I'm probably going to mess up because I'm the first person that goes, but that's okay.
Yeah. Yeah, you're right. Yeah.
And then
Lead by
it
example.
sort of shows everybody else, like, hey, if you're the senior man, or whatever the case is, people look to you as being the person that knows the most or is the most skilled, and you get up there and mess up, that sends a message to everybody else, hey, it's okay to mess up.
Sure.
Nobody's perfect. So um, that's one area that I've really come to accept and embrace, just because of my own uh, fears of messing up in earlier parts of my career, not wanting to be like, I don't know if I want to go first. I don't want to be the person that messes up. My own insecurities of that stuff. And then eventually it's like, oh, forget it. Like, it's going to happen. And that's how I'm going to learn.
Right. Right.
So
Absolutely.
I'm just going to go for it. And if people want to make fun of me, they want to make fun of me. It's okay. At least I'm in the arena participating.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Getting better by the
Right.
moment. Right. And
Mm-hmm.
I think your sign behind your head says, does that say excellence is what? My
Excellence
responsibility.
is
Yep.
my responsibility.
Yep.
So,
Absolutely.
mentor, a real important mentor and friend of mine, Mark Von Oppen, he runs a page called Fully Involved.
Absolutely. Yeah. Very
And
familiar.
so that's where that came from. Was Mark and the Fully Involved message has been instrumental for me in my career, because when I started, I didn't really have a senior man in my department.
Mm-hmm.
We're fairly young department. We've got a couple guys in their mid 40s and everybody else is in their 30s and younger. And so we don't have that person, um, who's been there for 20 some years, who's seen a lot. And so a lot of outside influences and outside people have been so instrumental, to me in guiding me to this point in my career. And Mark has been one of those people that has done that.
Yeah, and that's an important part of anybody's journey is to
Mm-hmm.
find those people, and they're not
Mm-hmm.
going to be the same people for everybody. But I talked about this the other day that even if you find those people and you take different pieces from five, six, however many different people, you toss them in a blender to make
Yep.
to make that shake,
Yeah. And
that makes you
the
better.
beauty about the world we live in now is it's so much easier to get to know and to have access to people. That's,
Sure.
people see what they want about social media and the negativity and the negative connotations that can come with it, but it's also a tremendous blessing and a tremendous opportunity to to find those people.
Mm-hmm.
And so, like, if you are, you work in the middle of Nebraska or North Dakota or wherever it is, you can get on your phone, you can get on your computer, and you can and search these people out and find them. And I have found personally that when you reach out to these people, they're always willing to talk and they're always willing to help, because deep down, that's all they want to do,
Sure.
is to help
Absolutely.
sort of push this momentum along. So,
Absolutely. Absolutely. So before we end, I just like to ask, because it's the kind of the world that we're in now, and obviously New York is on the top of the news for everything surrounding the current pandemic crisis that we're in.
mhm.
How are things in Idaho?
It's been fairly quiet. Um, we had, when it initially started to take a foothold here, it was actually in the Sun Valley area, because Sun Valley is a fairly popular tourist attraction, and a lot of wealthy individuals, with movie stars,
Mm-hmm.
and every year Bill Gates would host a conference up there, and so you get a lot of travel. They have a small airport up there, so you get a lot of private jets, private planes that fly in and out of there, and
Okay.
so you get people from all over the country that fly in and out of Sun Valley. So when it initially started, that was the hotbed, that took off. And it's not Blaine County is not a very big county. You would expect Boise, the valley here where I live, is about 750,000 people, I think, for the Boise metro area. So you would have thought that would really have been the hotbed to take off. And so initially it was up there, and then it started to spread a little bit around the state and around the valley here. But I think we're at about 2,500 positive cases and around 80 deaths. So it hasn't, fortunately, it hasn't been nearly as dramatic and as cumbersome as it's been in New York.
Right.
And so we've had restrictions lifted, and things are opening back up, and my wife, she had to work from home for a couple months, and she's back to going out and visiting her business partners and doing that stuff again. So it's it hasn't been as nearly as dramatic and drastic here as it has been other places around the country. We'll see what happens now that things are opening back up,
Right.
and people are getting out a lot more. I'm interested to see how that plays out. We at work haven't, I don't think we've had a lot of exposure to individuals that we've responded to thus far. So it's been a blessing and fortunate for us.
Do you guys out of your station do EMS as well, or are you strictly
Yes.
fire? Both?
No, we do both EMS and fire.
Okay.
And so we run, we're probably just under the 1,000 runs a year at our station, our department. We've been in the 900s. And so we average about 2.5 calls, I think, a day.
Okay.
And most of our responses are EMS calls.
Right.
Like we really don't get a lot of first due. We had a first due in January on my shift, and that was the first due I think I had in 2 years.
Wow.
Another shift they had a first due attic fire a few weeks ago, and it was the captain I was talking to. He said it was his first due he had in years as well. So
wow. Yeah.
We typically don't. We're a suburban area,
Sure.
A lot of houses, not a lot of commercial, a few apartments. It's mostly residential, and we just don't get them very often.
Yeah. Well,
that's the way it goes.
It sure does. Every place in the country isn't the Bronx or Trenton, New Jersey, or whatever big city you choose. But
we don't. I say we don't get to choose the calls we respond to. We only get to choose how we prepare for them.
Absolutely.
And so that's always one thing to keep in mind is we don't make the choice of when or what we respond to. We can only make the choice of how we prepare for those responses.
Absolutely. And on that note, John, I want to thank you for agreeing to come on the show.
I appreciate the invite.
Yeah, and connecting with me. This was great, and I absolutely feel that it is going to be valuable for the listeners of the podcast. Before we say our goodbyes, if go ahead and give your Instagram page a plug there, and because I sure hope some people decide to follow you, because I for one find your content to be great.
It's the Slow House Rules. It's both Instagram and Facebook. You can find it there, and yeah, I hope people will take something from it, and I certainly hope it will help keep people engaged and motivated. And no matter where you are valuable in this position. So just keep moving forward.
Absolutely. Well, John, thank you very much for coming on the show. I really appreciate it. It's an honor to have you, and stay safe and stay healthy. All right.
All right. You too. Thank you. Go Yankees.
All right, brother. Thank you.